Wonderful. Yay! Okay, we're officially on Clubhouse. We're live. We're recording. Sorry, guys, just setting up my Zoom. Thank you for my selfish babes for joining. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Hello, hello, hello. Hi, hi, hi. I appreciate you guys for joining. All right. So just to get started, my name is Olenike Osibowale. I'm the CEO and founder of Selfish Babe, which is my personal development and lifestyle brand, really teaching women how to selfishly and authentically love themselves around the world. And so what I like to teach women is spiritual self-love and spiritual self-love practices, so they are able to tap into their goddess-like nature, to really honor themselves, to really put themselves on the altar, and to honor themselves as the goddesses that they are. And so in today's recording, this is being recorded. This is a Selfish Babe Selfish Talk podcast, which is my top 200 podcasts on Apple. And so if you are not listening to Selfish Babe Selfish Talk podcast, please do check it out. This is an open conversation. So if you have something to say on this topic or something similar, I will definitely love to bring you up on the stage and love to hear your voice. Okay, so I'm just letting y'all know, even though I am chatting and even though I am talking, do not be afraid to raise your hand, because I am taking women up on the stage. I'd love to have you a part of my podcast. I'd love to hear your perspective and love to hear your thoughts on things. So during this conversation, I will make sure to say, hey, if anybody wants to get on stage, raise your hands, because I'll definitely allow you on stage. So I just want to say thank you to the beautiful ladies that are joining me today. And today's conversation is called Why Spiritual Baths Are Important to Me. So spiritual baths are something that I've been doing, I think since I was like 22 or 23. I had went to Florida State University as an undergrad person, then went to FAMU for grad school. And it really wasn't until I was in grad school is where I started, I really want to call it my spiritual journey. I've probably been on my spiritual journey for like all of my life now. I was raised, Christian. I'll say loose Christian because my mom wasn't super strict, but I know my grandma, who's Jamaican, when I was younger, she would always take me to Jamaica and we would always go to church and all that stuff. I remember falling asleep in her lap at church because it was so hot and I was bored. And so throughout my life, sometimes I'll be like, oh, I'm Christian, or one time I was, what is it called? It's not agnostic. Oh, I consider myself atheist and then agnostic. And so that's why I say I've been going through my spiritual journey through my whole life, just because I've had these different phases of what I thought I was or what I wanted to worship or what I wanted to believe. And so it really wasn't until I was in grad school where I started learning spirituality that made sense for me. Spirituality that was connected in African tradition. And so I do have Jamaican ancestry. I was born in America. And when I was at grad school at FAMU, I began to learn more about spirituality. In fact, some of my professors were priests and priestesses of what we call now today some spiritual practices, such as Ifa, such as Voodoo, such as Santeria. And now sometimes, and I hope this is not you, but if this is you, it's okay. Sometimes when I mention these different spiritual practices or traditional African spiritual religions, some people may be afraid and scared because for a while now, they have been demonized, right? And so for me, when I began to really learn more about ancestors, honoring my ancestors, venerating them, and learning about these different African spiritual practices, it felt right for me. This was the spirituality that works for me. And one thing that I've learned from, these spiritual traditions is about spiritual bathing and how important that is and how that's good for your spiritual hygiene. And so again, just putting the call out. If you have anything to say, do not be afraid to raise your hand. I will bring you up on stage, and I'll be saying that throughout the conversation. But I want to break this down. So if you're like, well, I don't even know what a spiritual bath is. Like, what makes it spiritual? What is it? Why is it different than like a regular bubble bath? And that relaxation that I know some women love to do, which I think is beautiful. I think it's beautiful to take a bath. I think it's beautiful to have that quiet time with yourself. But what makes a spiritual bath, at least in my definition, is the intentional use of herbs. That's what makes a bath a spiritual one for me. The intentional use of herbs, right? And so if I were to break this down even further, herbs, all flowers carry an energy, and a specific energetic property, right? Some herbs you can use for cleansing and stripping. Some herbs you can use for protection. Some herbs you can use for manifesting sweetness, love, success, and money into your life, right? They all have a specific vibration. Just recently, I had learned that the flower calendula is really good for wealth. And now that wasn't something that I knew. I had to look it up. I was like, oh, what are the spiritual properties of calendula? The flower is like this yellow flower. And it said, oh, it's really good for wealth. And so if I was making a candle or taking a bath that I wanted to attract more money, then I would use calendula in my bath. And so again, the reason why spiritual baths are spiritual for me is the intentional use of herbs in that bath, because I understand that they all are carrying an energetic vibration. And because I understand that they're all carrying an energetic vibration, what that means is that I know I can choose this, this, and that to get a specific outcome, right? And so for me, that's me using my magic. That's me using my knowledge, right? Back in the day, a lot of women used to be very knowledgeable about what certain herbs did. And back in the day, women would be called witches, but it would be seen as a negative thing. Now that we are in 2021, the term witch is not as much demonized, but I know for some women or selfish babes out here, you may not really resonate with the word witch, but I do have a podcast episode where I talked about how witchcraft has really helped me elevate my life. And I turned witchcraft in a positive way. It is not negative in the way that you're thinking. A lot of people automatically think demonic and evil and doing something bad and casting bad juju on people. And that's not what it is for me. It's the intentional use of energy, directing it in a certain way and getting an outcome. That is how you hone in and your power as a woman, as a goddess, as a witch. If you resonate with that, that is how you can hone in and create your reality, right? A lot of people talk about manifestation and just thinking it. And yes, the thinking it and the thoughts and the affirmations, right? That's all part of energy. That's all part of manifestation. But there are other ways that you can manifest, and that is through candles, and that is through the herbs, and that is through fixed candles. And, it's the whole thing, okay? It's a whole thing. And so one of my ways that I really love is taking my spiritual baths. And so that now that I've cleared up what a spiritual bath is, and you guys are more clear on that, I really want to talk about why they're important to me, but kind of how I was introduced to that, right? And so I mentioned when I was in grad school that I was learning about these traditional African spiritualities and religions such as Ifa, Lukumi, Santeria, Voodoo, etc., ancestor veneration, all of the above, right? Even hoodoo. And so during that time in grad school, I had met an Oshun priestess. I was introduced to her, and she basically showed us in our women's circle, because at that time I was in a women's circle and we were reading Queen Afua's book, Sacred Woman, highly recommend, by the way. And she showed us how to make the spiritual baths for cleansing. And that was a really powerful moment for me, because that really introduced me into the power of herbs, but being able to use it and wash it over my body for certain things. And for those asking, what is an Oshun priestess? How can I describe this in the most simplest way? It is a person that has been initiated into the mysteries of the goddess Oshun. And so for some, Oshun is known as an Orisha, a spirit of nature, primarily found in the river. And she is known for bringing sweetness, love, money, success to you. I also know her as a warrior, not only just a sweet goddess, right? And so this goddess of nature, Oshun, she's very widely known. You can look her up. This woman has been initiated into her mysteries. And so she has certain knowledges of this goddess and certain knowledge in general, certain spiritual knowledge in general. And sometimes people have to go through those things so that they can reach new heights. And so she was teaching us, or showing us how she made this spiritual bath, and it was basil. The herb that she used was basil. And I like to use basil a lot, especially for cleansing. Now, if you look up the spiritual properties of basil, it is known for cleansing. And so I just remember being there, and I believe she either had the basil out in the water, and she just showed us to rub the herbs with our hands into the water, washing it, right? And the water would start to turn this dark green. Some people like to boil the basil and put it on the stove and boil it out and add other little herbs in there in their prayers. And that's part of it too, right? Like the spiritual baths, like you're adding your prayer, like you're not just rubbing these herbs together. And yes, they're good for these things and they have their own energy, right? But you wanna guide that energy with your words, right? And so as I'm rubbing my hands in this basil in the water, I'm praying over it. And I'm praying over it in a way from power, not in a way of defeatedness. Sometimes I believe that when we have maybe learned how to pray when we were younger, it was from a place of maybe servitude, a place of begging or asking, when you could really pray from a place of power. But sometimes when I tell people that, they may be scared to pray from a place of power. But praying from a place of power is what I like to call affirmative prayer. It's very powerful. It's a very, very powerful way to shift energy. So anyway, I'm using my hands to mix these herbs together in the water, and I'm praying over it in an affirmative way. And I'm going to take these herbs. I'm going to either take a nice shower, and then I'm going to run these herbs over my body, sweeping it down, because again, basil is known for cleansing. Or some people can pour that whole pot of the basil in the water into a bath, like into a bathtub, and get into it. Of course, set your intentions and do it that way. But I always like to leave a little of this basil wash after taking a bath, because I like to really get it on my body. And so for me, the reason why taking spiritual baths, or one of the reasons why taking spiritual baths is so important for me, is my cleansing. It's what we call spiritual hygiene. You know, a lot of us are just out in the world, walking out in the world, and we're unaware. We're unaware of energy. We're unaware of entities, right? Just because we don't see them, we just don't believe that they're real. I like to call it like Harry Potter. It's like a real thing. But you're walking out here. Everything is composed of energy. You are composed of energy. Your words are composed of energy. Everything is vibrating at a certain level. Sometimes we like to call that negative or low vibrations, and sometimes we like to call that positive, and that's high vibrations, right? And so we affirm that we are vibrating on the highest level, right? And one way to really do that is by taking your spiritual baths, because you can take spiritual baths for cleansing. And a really good one is using basil. I love to use it, so I always love to recommend it. But that helps me cleanse off any negative energy, any lower vibrations, any entities, right, that may be attached to you, because it's a real thing. Sometimes entities can be attached to you, and I hate to say it, but maybe even control you, depending on how open you are. Some people are not protected enough out here because they're just unaware. But once you become aware, you want to start doing your rituals, right? Your spiritual self-love rituals, so that you can protect yourself and you can cleanse yourself, and you could really be walking out here in this world vibrating on a high level and really understanding that you are the one creating your reality, and to actually shift your reality at any point in time. And I mentioned spiritual self-love because that is what I teach women. I teach women how to use these spiritual self-love practices to deepen their love for themselves, to deepen their inner knowledge, and to really make themselves the altar, so they can start honoring themselves as the goddesses that they are. And one spiritual self-love practice that I highly recommend is taking spiritual baths. You need to cleanse yourself. You know, once you become aware, right? You're in this room now, you're listening to this podcast now, you're hearing me, you're aware. So you're no longer unaware, right? Sometimes they say ignorance is bliss, but you are no longer unaware, you are aware. And now that you are aware, what are you going to do about that? How are you going to be cleansing yourself on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, on a monthly basis? And so spiritual baths is one way that you can do that. Now, another reason why I like spiritual baths, and before I go into that, again, if you have something to say, you can definitely raise your hand and tap in and get on the stage, because I would love to hear what you have to say. So I'm just letting this know that it's okay to raise your hand and be on stage with me if you'd like to hear more. Even if you have questions, I'd gladly answer your questions. So another reason why I like spiritual baths is because for me, I like to take a lot of baths with like flowers. So like roses, the calendula, but I love the roses. Hibiscus, which in Jamaica is known as sorrow. Sometimes I'll take a bath with sorrow. And it's because I've gotten the spiritual message during one of my own baths, is that women, we must connect to the flowers, and we must rub ourselves with the petals. We must rub ourselves with the leaves. And sometimes, you know, you can get these baths where I think they put it in like tea bags sometimes or something, but you know, basically it's just so it's not as messy and the herbs aren't everywhere. And basically the herbs are in the tea bag, you put the hot water in and boom, you have the energy of the flower or the herb in the bath. And that's true, you do. But what is really potent is to get those herbs and those leaves on your body. And I remember I was taking a spiritual bath at one time, and I remember getting the message that we must rub ourselves with the flowers. We must rub ourselves with the flowers on our bodies and our skin. We really want to embed that energy into our being. And so one flower that I love to work with is roses. Roses are known as one of the most high vibrational flowers. They're known to carry the vibration of love, right? And we're not just talking about romantic love, but all types of love in general. Love in general. What does that look like for you? What does being loved in general look like for you? And it doesn't have to be romantic, right? That's acceptingness, that's compassion, accepting you as you are, right? Loving you with quote unquote all your flaws, just being accepted no matter what. And so for me, when I'm rubbing the roses on my body and I'm praying, that is me embedding that energy into my body. That is me infusing love into my body. That is me praying over myself, right? Because I am the goddess, I am the altar. And so, yes, we can take our stripping herbs and our basil and really cleanse deeply, right? That's that deep, bitter shit, which is good for you. But then we can also, as women, infuse more sweetness and love into our lives. And love, AKA the roses, is one thing that I love to use because it really does that. You know, you can take these baths and see miraculous things happen in your life. People want to help you at the grocery store. You get compliments. People just are there to support you, right? Is that your prayer for more support? I know I'd be praying about that every day. I always say, I am very supported. I am very loved and supported. That is one of my affirmative prayers daily, because that is how I wish to show up in the world and how I wish the universe to show up for me. Give me 1 second. Somebody had raised their hands. Ooh, I thought I got you. I was gonna get you, but then I guess you got down. But if you want to come back on stage, you can request it again and I'll add you. I just didn't see it. But using the flowers is very important. And I say that just because, like, maybe you will get a bath, or, you know, you get one of those baths you can buy at the store and it's in a tea bag. Tear that shit open and put the herbs in the bathtub. I put but my before and after of my baths look strikingly different. You know, the before in the water, I can put all the herbs and the flowers in the water. It looks so fucking beautiful. And then the after, you know, the tub is draining and you got a whole bunch of herbs in your fucking tub, you know, in the damn, the drainer. So you got to dig that shit out. And yes, it's messy, but it's worth it. It's messy, but it's worth it, because I loved what those herbs and the energy that they bring to me as the goddess that I am. And so I love to connect with the flowers, and I love rubbing the flowers on my body. Another reason why I love spiritual baths, or why spiritual baths are important to me, is because it really helps me understand that I can attract more things into my life, right? I talked about the cleansing. I talked about rubbing the flowers on you, but you can actually take spiritual baths to attract things that you want into your life, right? You can take a spiritual bath to attract money. You can take a spiritual bath to attract more self-love from yourself. You can take a spiritual bath to add more sweetness into your life. You can take a spiritual bath to add more success into your life. And again, why is that? Why is that? Because certain flowers and plants have specific vibrations. I've taken a spiritual bath where I've added yellow roses, gold flakes, like gold flakes, you can get them like at a hoodoo store, as well as citrine crystals. And I love citrine because that stone represents abundance, success, prosperity. And so it's like I'm adding nature's elements, right, into the water, which is already a living energy, right? And I'm magnifying that through the prayers that I'm speaking over the water. And I'm rubbing that all over my body, bitch. What that mean? That means I am attracting all the things that I want. I'm making sure that I am a magnet for these energies to come to me, because I don't always have to want to do something all the time that is hard to make good things come for me, right? Come to me. So yes, we can speak it into existence. We have the prayer in it, but what other ways can we up ourselves and magnetize ourselves as women to really attract the things that we want? And so I can take a spiritual bath for all these things because, one, I have the knowledge of what herbs I can use. And if you don't, we can do a quick Google search. We can get some herbal books. If you have the Selfish Babe app, I definitely have books recommended section. And in that books recommended section, I know I have some herbal books there. And what these herbal books do is they also talk about the spiritual properties of the herbs that you're using, right? Maybe I want more sweetness or more money to come to me. So maybe I'm gonna add some honey in that. Maybe I'm gonna add some cinnamon into that. I'm gonna add the gold flakes, like I mentioned, the citrine. Now, those are nature's elements. They may not exactly be herbs, but they all carry a certain frequency and a certain vibration. So another reason why spiritual baths are important to me, because I must always be the magnet for the things that I want. And I'm always going to do the different things to make sure that I'm a magnet for all the things that I want. It's not just sitting down and praying by your bed and hoping and wishing that things are going to go well. What are you doing as the goddess to make sure things go well as well? How are you co-creating your reality? How are you showing up from a place of power and not a place of defeatedness? Because that's really important, right? A place of power, a place of knowing that you can shift your reality at any point in time. Again, another call. If you want to get on stage, raise your hand and I will get you up. If you have a question that you want to ask me about spiritual baths, raise your hand and I will get you up. Don't be shy. I want to hear from my selfish babes. You got any questions? Raise your hand and I'll get you up. But another reason why spiritual baths are important to me is for my protection and for time to myself. Oh, looks we have a hand raised. Alicia. I think I said your name wrong, but I'm going to get it correct. Hi, love. I can hear you. Yes. Did I say your name right?
You actually said my name right.
Oh, good. I didn't know. That's great. That's good. What is up?
So the question I have is, how often should you do a spiritual bath?
How often? This is a good question. Okay, so my first answer is going to be you should do a spiritual bath as often as you feel like you need to, but that's not if you're a beginner. If you're a beginner, I think that you should do a spiritual bath once a week for a month. And the reason I say that is because I want to get you in the habit of starting to take spiritual baths. So if you're like, I've never taken a spiritual bath, again, remember, it is making sure that we're using the energy and intention with the herbs. That's what makes it a spiritual bath, right? And so if you've taken bubble baths or baths and they weren't with intention, you didn't take a spiritual bath. Okay, but if you want to start taking spiritual bath, I would recommend once a week for a month straight, just because we want to get you into the habit. But once you are in the habit, then as often as you feel like you need to, right? Sometimes I'll do it twice a month. Sometimes I won't even get into the bathtub. Sometimes I'll just mix up the herbs and make sure I get the water right, take a shower, and then pour those herbs over me. But I would really recommend once a week for at least a month.
Okay, and where would I get this, the herbs from?
Yeah, so let's say that Amazon is a really good place to get some herbs, first of all. If you go to Whole Foods or Walmart, somewhere that sells tea. So I have a lot of tea, but sometimes I may just use that tea to add in my spiritual bath, right? So let's say I got some cinnamon tea, which I have from Jamaica, or I get some cinnamon powder, and I'm going to add that into my spiritual bath. Or you can get basil from the cooking section, right? And you can add that into your spiritual bath. I like to use live basil, by the way. So if you guys are getting basil, I really prefer the fresh basil versus the dry basil. But you can look up all these herbs on Amazon, like a bulk pack of basil, a bulk pack of blah, 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 cinnamon. I'm trying to think of some other flowers. Sometimes you can get them on herbal store. So if you Google herbal store, I think there's one called Mountain Rose. They sell herbs in bulk. And that means that you're going to get a big pack of these herbs, and you can start adding these into your mason jars and labeling them. And then when you're ready to make your baths, all you got to do is pull in and drop some in.
Okay, thank you.
No problem, Alicia. I'm so happy I got your name right. Thank you for coming on. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
All right. Oh, all right. We have somebody else. Tanisha. Hello. Hi. How are you?
I'm great. How are you all doing?
Doing good.
Good. So I have a question, because I have taken spiritual baths before. Thank you so much for turning me on to citrine, because that's definitely something that I'm working more on.
Yes.
As far as that crystal and what it's used for, because it's, for me, it's like my sacral chakra. So
yes.
And that's something that I struggle with, as far as my femininity, and I'm trying to tap more into that. But I've noticed that, when I have been, since I have been showing myself more self-love, taking the spiritual baths, just kind of getting into my stuff that I am tapping more into my femininity.
Yes.
But I wasn't aware. So we are able to put the citrine inside the water.
Yes. So
okay.
There are
and
some.
Then also,
wait, I just want
to
say this really quick, just so I don't want to mess up the points. But you can definitely put the citrine in the bath. There are some crystals and stones that you can't. Like I know selenite. They don't recommend putting that in water just because it can melt and like dissolve. And so you want to definitely research. Hey, is it okay to put blah 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 in bath? Or what crystals can I not put in water? But yes, citrine is good to go in the bathtub.
Perfect. Okay. And then can you just give me your ingredients, typically what you would put in your self-love bath? Like if you wanted to continue to welcome more self-love and also attract, love of others and things like that. What would you put in your bath?
So it really differs from time to time, but a lot of the times I'm always having roses in my bath, whether that's a red rose, a pink rose, a yellow rose, a white rose. Like I'll go to Whole Foods and I'll stand in front of the flower section and I'll be like, oh, which one speaks to me today? And I'll be like, oh my God, these are so beautiful, and I'll get them. And because that was my initial reaction to them. These are so beautiful, and I get them and I add those into my bath. Or sometimes I'll get peony flowers. But roses, I always recommend for women, especially if you are on your self-love journey, especially if you want to tap more into your divine femininity. Like you can never go wrong with a rose. If you want to get into that sweetness and that femininity, I would really recommend a light pink or a dark pink rose. But you like roses, you can never go wrong. I like to put gold flakes into my baths. The reason I put gold flakes is because I'm a wealthy bitch. I mean, that's just my affirmation. So for me, self-love.
Exactly. I'm with it. That comes along with it, baby. I need all of it.
Exactly. So for me, self-love is also me attracting the funds. And so for me, I add gold flakes. There's this good store, House of Hoodoo, which is HAUSOFHOODOO. House of Hoodoo, and she sells gold flakes. She has like a botanica online, which is a spiritual shop online, and you can kind of get those ingredients there. Jasmine is also a really wonderful flower. I use jasmine a lot as well, so I highly recommend roses, jasmine, gold.
Gotcha. Thank you, love.
No problem. Thank you for joining. Thank you, ladies. I'm appreciating the questions and the answering. I love it. And so, I wanted to get into another reason why spiritual baths are important to me. That spiritual insight, right? When I was starting to do baths, in the beginning, a lot of times I may play some jazz because I love jazz music, but some jazz or something quiet, get me in the mood and just kind of sit in the water. And maybe I just started out with maybe some crystals before I started to use the herbs. But as I got deeper into knowing what spiritual baths was and what they could be for me, I would often make sure the room is dark, and I'll light maybe one or two candles just for a little bit of light, so it's not pitch black. And I would have it quiet. Like I wouldn't play any music at all, just because I really want to know what my spirit has to say to me, what spirit in general has to say to me, right? We have different entities that are around us that can communicate with us and talk to us and give us messages, and we can even channel messages. And a lot of times you can't do that unless you are quiet and not having noise in the background. And so I know sometimes when people think about their self-love baths, they're like, oh, let me play this music, let me do that, let me do that. And that's all cute. Like it's cute, and I think it's cool to do every once in a while. But if we're really wanting to up-level ourselves as goddesses and really tap into our divine insight, I recommend being in quiet, because you want to listen to yourself. You want to hear what comes up for you. You want to think about what comes up for you. You want to write it down. I always have a journal sometimes. You want to write, or sometimes I have my phone to record, like I'll do a voice note or something. You want to write down what comes down to you, because you're in this water, you have prayed over it, you've added your herbs, right? Let's say I was doing a abundance bath and I was in there. Maybe I got a new idea on how I can make some money. Wouldn't I want to write that down? Wouldn't I want to know that information? But if I was playing music, maybe it wouldn't come to me because I was distracted by what the singer was saying in the lyrics, and now I'm focused on what they're saying versus on what my spirit is saying to me. Because your spirit does talk. you have higher knowledge. You may not feel that way right now. And a powerful affirmation you can say that just came to me is, I have higher knowledge. I have higher knowledge. I know I have higher knowledge. I have higher knowledge. I know I have higher knowledge. I know I have higher knowledge. I have higher knowledge. I know exactly what to do for myself. I know exactly what to do for myself. I know exactly what to do for myself. You know, these are some prayers, some affirmative prayers that you can say and speak into the water, because as you are in that water, you are adding your good juju, right? Your words, your energy into the water, and you're bathing in that water. Would you not want those wonderful words you just spoke to yourself to be infused into your body, to work in your body on a cellular level, right? So maybe you are somebody that may be a little confused about what direction to go, and you take a spiritual bath for clarity. Coconut milk is really good for clarity, by the way. So you add coconut milk into your bath, and you're praying for clarity, and you're affirming clarity in your life. And maybe you sit there for a little bit, and maybe you were able to get clearer on something else. Or maybe you're able to rub that bath over your body, you pat it dry, then you go to sleep and you have a dream about something that you should do. Maybe the next day you have an insight about something, because you're using, why did that happen? You're using your energy. You are shifting your energy. You are more knowledgeable about your energy. And so you are shifting your energy in a way that is doing good for you. You are now working in your favor. You're not working against your favor, right? And sometimes when we distract ourselves, right, and don't take time for that quiet time, then we are not using ourselves in our favor. That's when we become a hindrance to ourselves. And I don't want my selfish babes to be hindrances to themselves, right? I want you to be proactive with yourself. I want you to be a blessing to you. A lot of times my affirmation to myself is, I'm a blessing to myself. I am a blessing to myself. That's the kind of lives you want to live. And so you want to be able to start shifting that energy into your favor, right? And this is what I teach when it comes to spiritual self-love. I'm just going to do a little advertisement. I'm starting up my new program called Selfish as Fuck Academy. It is beginning April 1st. And this is where I am really teaching women how to embody being a selfish babe in their own life, and really, really tap into the goddesses that they are, so they can start changing their lives, so they can start being the altar and honoring themselves as the goddesses that they are. And so if you are interested in my Selfish as Fuck Academy, it is invitation only. DM me at SelfishBabes on Instagram. You can click on my profile right here. Then it goes right into Instagram. DM me spiritual self-love and why you think it's for you. So, or you can, just DM me. That's the quickest way to get in contact with me, is to DM me. But I think that spiritual insight, that quietness, that time to yourself is extremely important for women. But a lot of times we're always distracting ourselves. Relaxation is one thing, and intentionally doing something to gain spiritual clarity is another, right? I could be like, I want to watch Netflix and I want to watch my Korean dramas, because that's what I do. I watch my Korean dramas. I love my Korean dramas. But that may not be a time for spiritual insight. I mean, I may be really enjoying myself and have an energy of joy. And so because I have an energy of joy, I'm attracting more joyous things in my life. That's, one thing. But then I may take a spiritual bath for clarity, for protection, for money, for self-love, for all these different things, just for my upkeep in my spiritual hygiene, right? So that's two different things, relaxation and, okay, we try and do this for spiritual insight. Let me see if there's anything else that I missed. Yeah, that's basically it. I just think that, spiritual baths just been something I've been doing for the past 6 years now. It's something that I love to do. And now it has become a habit for me to do them, and I do them in different ways. And I just want other women to be more knowledgeable about it. And so I definitely think taking your spiritual baths is very important, especially if you are a woman who is on your spiritual and self-love journey, who wants to know more about herself, who wants to continue guiding her energy and be a blessing to yourself. It's really, really important that we begin to understand that, yes, we have this physical world, but we also do have an unseen world. We have a world where energy is moving and shifting and shaking. And how can we tap into that? Because life is not just always happening to us. We are the ones creating our own lives. But if you don't have a knowing about that, a deep knowing about that, then life will always seem like it's happening to you. And that's just not the case. And sometimes you just need the spiritual insight, right? Like, I get my readings or spiritual readings done because at a time I needed to be guided on certain things that I had to start doing spiritually for myself to help elevate. And that's something I'm definitely going to give my women that are in my Selfish as Fuck Academy. But if anybody else has any last minute questions, please raise your hand now, because I'm about to end this conversation or this room very shortly. I just want to thank you guys for joining me on why spiritual baths are important to me. If you do not have my free app called Selfish Babes, please go download it today in your app store or your Google store. It's going to send you a free affirmation as well as a self-love reminder to your phone for free. And if you're not following Selfish Babes on Instagram, that's where I teach spiritual self-love. Please follow me at Selfish Babes. Click on my profile right here in the Clubhouse app, and then click on Instagram and you'll see me come up. And if you are interested in joining my academy, just DM me. But I love you, ladies. I just want to say thank you so much for joining this call. Thank you so much for being in this clubhouse. Thank you so much for gaining the insight needed on why spiritual baths are important. And for those like Tanisha, who's already doing your spiritual baths, keep it up. I promise you these spiritual baths are going to help change your life. I've been praying for myself now through using spiritual self-love for the last 6 years. And I have really seen an elevation in my life, an elevation into the woman and the goddess that I am. And I just really want other women to experience that. And so I say thank you so much for joining me. I love you guys and have a good day. Mwah. Bye.